Hello. Here we are. It's another episode of Farmers Market Finds. Welcome to my Brooklyn kitchen. We are about to make, this is the second episode of our three-part poutine series, and this episode is a really important aspect to a poutine. There's only 3 ingredients really in a poutine, so each thing is really important, and this is the gravy. You really don't want a bad gravy on your poutine, then there's just a recipe for disaster. So we found some amazing beef bone marrow and grass-fed beef, and so I've been making a beef broth, which is the base to any good gravy. So you could make gravy with a store-bought beef broth, but it's not going to taste as great as if you make it yourself with your own bones that you find. So I'm going to just grab that. It's been simmering away for about 2 hours, and I also roasted the bones. Excuse me. I also roasted the bones and the vegetables. The vegetables are also from the farmer's market. That's onions, carrots, and celery. I roasted those up, and then I put them in the pot and brought that to a simmer for 2 hours. And now we're going to separate the meat, the vegetables, the bones, and get going on the rest of our gravy. So I'm gonna grab that. Farmers market, see what we can find. Okay. Now I'm trying to understand why I got this tray. I forget. Probably a reason. I'm just going to put it to the side for now. Okay. Whoa, here's our amazing pot of broth. So the difference between stock and broth is broth has broth usually has meat in it, and stock is usually just bones and vegetables. So we have both bones and meat, and the meat I'm going to pull out. It's stew beef, so it can take the roasting and the simmering. It's still going to be delicious, and that's going to get torn up and thrown into our gravy as well, so you get like a really meaty gravy. But I have to take out the vegetables that have done absolutely everything they can, and these are going to go in the compost or in the garbage. This is celery leaves. These are our beautiful pieces of celery. Notice farmer's market celery is usually a lot more small and like doesn't seem as nice. This is maybe not the right tool for the job. Doesn't seem as nice as the grocery store version, but it's actually packed with a lot of flavor. Like, look, this is a celery stalk. It seems a little shrimpy, but it's actually really flavorful. I'm gonna grab a slightly different tool to take these vegetables out. But, whoa, oops. Here's our amazing beef marrow bone. It has done everything it can. So that is just going in the garbage. And this is some delicious bone marrow. I'm actually going to save this with our meat and throw it in our gravy because you really don't want to waste that. This is like super delicious. So this is my bowl for collecting things that are going back into the gravy, and this is my bowl for basura, garbage. Okay. Let me find. Here's some onions. There's a beautiful piece of meat. Oh my gosh, I kind of want to taste it, but so I'll show you how tender it is. This is going to be hot. See how tender that is? And we're just going to shred that into our gravy later, and it's going to be so good. Probably the best poutine. If you make this recipe the way that I'm telling you with farmers market ingredients, it will be the best poutine you've ever had, hands down. Okay. I'm not going to bore you with me just fishing these ingredients out of here. Here's another chunk of meat. Put that in the save bowl. But once this is all strained, here's another big bone. Oops. Another big bone that I put in here. Delicious. Oh, and another bone. I didn't even remember what I was doing. I want to make sure that I get all the marrow from inside of here. It's really hot. You can just put a knife or your tongs in and make sure you're getting all of that out, because you want that to go into your gravy, not into the garbage. So I also added a lot of black pepper, because black pepper is really good in beef broth. Okay, I'm gonna keep working on this and I'll catch you after. Yum, coffee is so good some days. Okay, so I got rid of the spent vegetables and bones. Now, I said earlier compost, but actually, unless you have a very sophisticated composting process or whatever, you really shouldn't put meat in your compost. If it's an at-home compost, it can attract the wrong kinds of vermin. So maybe like don't put, just, it unfortunately has to go in the garbage, but that's fine, because all of the nutrients and all of the flavor and everything that was in those bones and in those vegetables is in the broth that we made. I've shredded up our meat and it looks delicious. I actually tasted some. It is delicious, even though there's no salt or anything on it and it's just boiled meat. It's so good. So this is going to go into our gravy once our gravy is done. Now I have, I took and set aside some of our broth, because whenever I make broth, I always want to make more than what I need, because it's always great to have on hand. So I set aside some in a little pitcher. And now I'm going to teach you how to make a roux and make your gravy, and then we'll throw this in and add some seasoning, just basically black pepper and salt, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, the butter is melted. Now it's time to add your flour. I'm not adding this whole cup, I'm just adding what I think it needs. So that looks pretty good. And voila, that is a roux. So now you're gonna cook this. I'm gonna add a tiny bit more flour. Because you want to have a thick gravy for poutine. I'm doing this on like high heat. You don't have to. You could do this on a little lower. In fact, I'm going to turn it down. So you just want to cook this until it smells like cookies baking in the oven, or for like a minute or maybe 2 minutes. And that's going to cook out that raw flour flavor. And it's going to activate the proteins in the flour, which are going to thicken your gravy. Okay, almost there. Okay, now my stock is still warm, so I want to add it a little bit at a time so I don't get lumps. If your stock was cold, you could add it all at once. So whisk it, see it gets so thick right away. Add a little more. Whisk, whisk, whisk. This looks like amazing. I'll let you know that I actually am wondering if it's going to be a bit thin, but it's still boiling hot right now. So I think probably it will thicken up to the proper consistency as it just sits and cools a little bit. Okay, this looks incredible. I'm sure it's going to taste incredible too. Definitely first thing, add the salt. Give it a little taste. Okay. Oh, yum. Really yummy. Needs a lot more salt. Nearly there. If your gravy is too thin, just simmer it, and some of that water will evaporate, and simmer it until you get the consistency you want. But be careful, if you've already added salt and you're simmering it to reduce it, the salt isn't evaporating, so it's going to concentrate that flavor, so you have to be careful. That's really good. Okay. I'm gonna add, this is like also salty, but a different kind. It's gonna add to the color as well. Whoa, super good. Okay, now lots of black pepper, or at least that's what I like. Black pepper and beef just go so well together. Okay. This tastes incredible. Now we're just going to add a tiny bit of acidity with a little splash of sherry vinegar. Delicious. Wow. Super good. Okay, I will say, it is a little thin still. So, I am going to let it simmer on the stove, but, you know, this is basically it. This is how you make amazing gravy from grass-fed beef, and stay tuned for, you'll see it in its final form on next week's episode, when we make fries and we put the whole poutine together. So we'll use the cheese curds from last week, this gravy, and some amazing fries, and that will be our poutine series. So thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel, and you better make this because it's so freaking good.